Alright, Chapter 9, Physiology, the Avenue of Excellence. Devils can be driven out of the heart by touch of a hand on a hand or a mouth. Tennessee Williams. When I led seminars, I always set off scenes of the ruckus, joyous, and chaotic frenzy. If you walked in the door at the right moment, you would come upon with perhaps 300 people jumping up and down, screeching, with howling, roaring like lions, waving their arms, shaking their fists like Rocky, clamping their hands, puffing up their chest, strutting like peacocks, giving them thumbs up signs, otherwise acting as if they had some personal power that they could light up in the city if they wanted to. What the heck is going on? What's going on is the other half of the cybernetic loop, the physiology of the mental bedlam, is about one thing, that acting as if you had more resourceful, the more powerful, happier than you ever felt before, acting as if you knew you were going to succeed, acting as if you were totally energized. One way to get yourself into a state that supports your achievement the outcome is as if you were already there, acting as if the most effective way of the putting physiology in the state you would be if you were already effective. The physiology is the most important powerful tool we have. It instantly change, instantly produce the dynamic result of the old saying, if you were powerful, the pretend to be powerful, the true word of the was never spoken, except the people that give the powerful results from seminars result that will change your life. To do that, they have to be with the most resourceful physiology possible, but there's no powerful action without powerful physiology. If you adopt a vital, dynamic, excited physiology, you will automatically adopt the same kind of state. But the biggest leverage you will have in any situation, physiology becomes if it works and fast and works without fail. Physiology, internal representation are totally linked. If you change one, you instantly change the other. I'd like to say that there's no mind, there's only a body. There's only a body. And there's no body, there's only a mind. If you change the physiology of that is your power through breathing, the patterns, your muscles, tension, your tonality, your instant change of the internal representation with your state. Can you remember the time that you felt with running down? Have you ever perceived the words, have the physical tired of the muscle, the weak, you have the pain of something you perceive of the world quite different from when you've rested and felt alive with the vital, with the physiological manipulation, with the powerful tool of controlling your own brain, with extremely important, with the visual eye, with how strong the effects of us. It affects us. That is not the sum of the extraneous variable, but an absolutely crucial part of the cybernetic loop that is always in action. When your physiology revs down the positive energy you start, your state runs down. Your physiology brightens, but intensifies your state, but it does the same thing. So physiology with the lever of the emotional change. In fact, you can't have an emotion without corresponding change of the physiology. And you can't have the physiology without having the corresponding change in state. There are two ways to change state, with the changing internal representation and changing physiology. So if you want to change the state in an instant, what you do is zap your change of the physiology, with your breathing, your posture, with the facial expression, the quality of the movement, and so on. If you start to go to with a certain specific things you can do with the physiology to continue to communicate to yourself, with slump within your shoulder position, relaxation of the many of the major muscles within the leg, become tired and simple with changing the internal representation, so they give your nervous system a message that you're tired. If you change the physiology of the way when you feel strong, they will change with your internal representation, how you feel at the moment. If you keep telling yourself that you're tired, you're forming the internal representation that keeps you tired. If you say that you have the resourceful alert and the top thing, but consciously adopt the physiology, and your body will make it so. Change your physiology, you change your state. In this chapter, belief that you should show little above the effect that your beliefs have on health. Everything in the scientific or finding today emphasizes one thing: sickness and health, vitality and depression, often the decisions. There are things that we can decide to do with our physiology that usually are not conscious decisions, but they're decisions nonetheless. No one consciously says, I'd rather be depressed than happy, but depressed people do. When they think of the depressed with a mental state with a very clear, identifiable physiology, but it's not hard to visualize a person with depressed people that often walk around with their eyes down. They're assessing synthetic mode with telling themselves about all things that make them feel depressed, and they drop all their shoulders and take weak and shallow breath. They do all the things to put into the body a depressed physiology, are deciding the depressed they are, and the depression is a result that requires very specific body image to create. Even Charlie Brown understands this. Peanuts. This is a Peanuts. This is my depression stance. When you're depressed, it makes a lot of difference how you stand. The worst thing you can do is straighten up and hold your head high because you're starting to feel better. If you're going to get off any of the joy of being depressed, you've got to stand like this. The exciting thing that you can easily create with a result with a call to ecstasy by changing the physiology of certain specific ways after all of the emotion with the complexity, association, complex configuration, physiological state without changing the internal representation. I can change the state of any depressed person and sound with the don't have the look of the what picture of the depressed person with the make with the spine with the change of the physiology with its zap and change the state. If you stand straight up, if you throw the shoulders back with a deep breathe deeply with your chest, if you look upward when you put yourself in the resource of the physiology, you can be with the depressed. Try yourself with a stand up ball. And up tall, throw the shoulder with the back and the deep breath, look up and move your body. So if you can feel the depressed in the posture, you'll find it almost immediately impossible to instant with your brain with getting the message that your physiology to be alert, vital resources, and what it becomes. What people come to me and say that they can't do something, I said, act as if I could do it. If you could do it, they usually reply, well, I don't know how. So I said, act as if you do know how to. Stand the way you would be standing if you don't know how to do it. Breathe the way that you're breathing if you don't know how to right now. Make your face look as if you can do it right now. As soon as they stand that way and they breathe that way, but they put their physiology in the state, they instantly feel that they can do it. It works without fail because of the amazing leverage of being adaptive with the change physiology over and over again. Simple changing physiology can make the people to do what they can never do before because the second that they change the physiology, they change their state. Think of something you imagine that you could do, but would like to be able to do. Know how you would stand if you knew that you could do it. How would you talk? How would you breathe right now? Put yourself in congruent and possible with the physiology that you would be when the new if you could do it, but the make the whole body give you the same message. Make sure with the stand of the breathing, the face reflect with the physiology you have if you knew that you could know the difference between the statement and the one you were in and the congruently maintain with the right physiology. You will feel as if you can handle it. Why don't you think what you didn't think you could before? Same thing happens with the firewalk. When some people face a bed of cold with a shade with a total confidence, readiness to become the combination of the internal representation, physiology, therefore with the constrive the confidently healthy of the crowd with the hot cold. Some people have begin to panic at the last moment that maybe change their internal representation was going to happen. So that now maybe the worst possible scenario or searing heat may take them out of the confident state of the approach for the edge of the bed of the cold. As a result of their bodies are maybe shaken. With the three of them maybe decrying with a freeze up. All of their muscles locked, they may have the number of the other major physiological reactions to help them break through their fear of the moment to take an action in spite of the seemingly impossible odds. I need only one thing to do, change their state. Remember that all human behavior is the result of the state we're in. When we feel strong, with resourceful, we attempt things we never would if we felt scared and weak and tired. So the firewalk does not just teach intellectually, but it gives the experience of the change of the state of the behavior of the moment to support their goals. And regardless of what they had thought, what they felt previously, what do I shake them? What do I shake? Why do I shaking, crazy, frozen, purple, shrieking at the edge of the bed of the coals? One thing I can do with the chain of the internal representation can have to think of how you will feel with a void after having walked successfully, healthily over the side of the coal. Because of him, the create with the internal representation change with the physiology of the man over the 2 or 4 seconds the person is resourceful state. You can see him changing within his breath, the facial breath, and you can tell him to go with the same person who was paralyzed, a fair split with the second a year earlier, but now walks purposely over coals and celebrates on the other side. But sometimes the people have the clear internal picture of the burning and tripping over the bigger than their representation of being able to walk close to goals successfully with the healthfully. So I need to have them change the submodalities, and this can take time. My other choice is one of the most effective of someone with a totally panic in front of the coals to change with the physiology with the after all the change with the internal representation. The nervous system has a single body to change with its posture, breathing pattern, muscle tension, and so on. So why not just go to the source, bypass all of the other communication chain with the physiology directly? So I talk with the crying person to take him, have him look up at the body, doing this, being in the acts with the visual aspect with the neurology instead of the kinesthetic. Almost immediately he stops crying. Try this yourself. If you're upset with the crying, want to stop, look up and put your shoulders back and get in the visual state you're feeling with the chains almost instantly. You could do this with your kids. When they get hurt, they have them look up. The crying and the pain will be stopped at least with a degree of the tremendously in a moment. I might have the person stand over the way when they have their total confidence, but now knew they could walk successfully, healthily across the coals, breathe the way that they would be breathing, and say something in the tone of the voice someone has totally competent in this way, with his brain with a new message about how to feel the end, resulting shape of the same person who is totally immobilized with fear, second they can produce the action with the support of the goal. Same technique can be practiced whenever we feel we can't do something, we approach the woman or man with we can't talk with to the boss, and so on. We can change our state with the empower with ourselves to take action with the change with the picture with the dialogues in our mind with the changing how we stand. And how we are breathing in the tone of voice, we are even the ideas of the change, both physiology with the tone, with the habit of doing this, rather than immediately feel the resourcefulness and be able to follow through the actions necessary to produce the result of the desired. Same truth with the exercise, with if you work hard with the short with the breath, to keep saying with yourself how tired you are and how far you will run, you will indulge with the physiology with sitting down and painting into some parts of the communication, however, that even though you are out of breath, to consciously stand upright in the direction you're breathing into a normal rate. If you will feel recovered in the matter of a moment. Addition, how we change our feeling with us over the action, change with the internal representation, physiology, biochemical, electrical properties of our bodies. Are also effective. Studies show that when people get depressed, their immune system follows suit when it becomes less efficient with a white blood cell count drops. Have you ever with Curlin photograph of the person with the representative of the body with the biological energy they retain with the resource remarkable as a person. Change the state of the mood, the chemical link of the mind with the body, the intense state with the whole electrical field can change with what other things wouldn't otherwise seem possible. Everything like and the experience with the retail with the other bodies that have the fewer limited with the whole positive negative than we have been led to believe. Dr. Herbert Benson, who has written extensively about the mind-body relation with the recount of the astonishing story of the power of the voodoo, different parts of the body within one Australian Aboriginal tribe, which doctors practice with the custom called the pointing the bone and the consistent casting of the magic spell with the shell of the opponent. The victim knows with absolutely certainty he will undergo some terrible degree probable death. This is how the Dr. Benson described one such occurrence with 1925. The man described that he was being boned by the enemy is indeed with a pitiable sight, but the head standing against aghast with his eyes staring at a treacherous pointer, his hand lifted through the ward off the lethal medium of the image of the pouring into his body. Check his cheeks blanch, his eyes become glossy, and the expression on the face becomes horribly distorted. He attempts to shriek, but usually sound choked in his throat, and all that one might see with the front of his mouth, with the body begin with a tremble, with the muscle, with a twist, involuntary. He sway with the backwards and fall to the ground. After a short time, a period to be in swoon, but after all the withers and the mortal agony covered in his face with the hands of the being in the moan, his death is only part of the comparatively short time. I don't know about, but one of the most vivid of the horrifying description that I ever read. I don't think I'll ask you to model it, but also one of the most telling examples of imaginal power or physiology within belief. In conventional terms, nothing was being done to the man, nothing at all, but the power of the one belief and the force of its own physiology created a terrifying, potent, negative force that utterly destroyed him. And in this sort of experience with limited societies we consider the primitive, of course not exactly the same process goes on under us every day with Benson Wrench with Dr. George L. England of the University of Rochester Medical Center with developed a lengthy file of the newspaper items all over the world considering sudden death with unexpected circumstances. Each of the cases nothing something awfully happening outside of the world rather than culprit was the victim of their own negative internal representation. Each case of something made the victim feel powerless and helpless and alone with the result of the virtually same with the Aboriginal was right. What's interesting to me is there seems to have been more research for the anecdotal with the emphasis on the harm side of the mind and the body in relation with it, and on the help side we always hear about the horrible effects of the and after people losing that will of the life after death of the loved one. We will all see how the negative state of the emotion can literally kill us, but we'll hear less about the ways the positive states can help us, heal us. One of the most famous stories on the side of the letter is the Norman cousin. The anatomy of the illness, he described how to be made miraculously recovered along with the debilitating illness by laughing his way to health. Laughter was one of the tools of the cousin, even the conscientious effort to mobilize his will to live and prosper for the major part of the regime, and spending with a good deal of his day with emergent films, television programs, books that made him laugh. They obviously changed with the consistent internal representation he was making that latter radically changed with his physiology with the meds of the nervous system and how to respond. He found that immediately part of the physical change that ensued with the slept better, but his pain was lessened and the entire physical presence was improved. Eventually, he recovered completely. Even one of his doctors initially, she said, said he had 1 in 500 chance of making a full recovery. The cousins concluded that he had learned never to underestimate the capacity of the human mind and body to regenerate, even though the prospects seemed to be rich with the life of the force, maybe at least understood for the force of the on Earth. Some fascinating research at the beginning of the surface may shed light with the cousins' experience and others like it. The studies look like at a facial expression effect of the way we feel. We conclude that it's not much for we smile, but we feel good and laugh, but we're good spirit, but rather smiling and laughs at it off the biological problem. In fact, we may make us feel good. They increase the flow of the blood of the brain and change the level of the oxygen level, the stimulation, neurotransmitter, but the same things happen in the other expression, the their facial expression, physiology, fear and anger, with the distrust or surprise that you will feel. Our bodies are gardens, our wills are gardeners. Our bodies are gardeners, and our wills are gardeners. William Shakespeare. There are 80 muscles within the face of the act of the tourniquets, either to keep the blood supply steady while the blood is extreme with the wild swings of the altering brain blood to apply. The sum of the degree of the brain function in a remarkable pattern was written in the 1907 with a French physician named Israel of the Wayman theorized that the facial expression of the action of the changes on the feelings of the other for researchers today finding the same thing with Dr. Paul Ekman and professor of psychiatry at the University of California in San Francisco. Till the LA Times in June 5th, 1985. You know if you have the emotion and show it on your face. Now, if you've seen it goes the other way too. You become what you put in your face, and if you laugh at suffering, you don't feel suffering inside. If you face your sorrow, your sorrow shows sorrow, you don't feel it inside. In fact, Altman says, same principle, even the regular beat lie detectors, people who have put themselves in physiology believe that even when they are lying through their teeth will register belief. All exactly what and I and others know linguistic programs have teaching you, but now it looks like through the scientifically community final verifying what they already found that useful for the lab with other things in book that they'll be validating upcoming years. But you don't have to wait for an academic research to form it for you. You can use the right in a way to produce the results you desire now. However, we're learning so much now about the mind and body correlation. Some of the people that teach what they already have to do is to give good care of your body. If your body is working on the peak levels, your brain will become more effectively as well. The better you the body, the better your brain is going to work. That's the end sense of the work of the Moshe, the Flaccarius. He used movement to teach people how to think and how to live. So we could just found the simple working with the concept level that can change the self-image, your state of the overall functioning of your brain. In fact, the state of the quality of your life, the quality of your movement, is work with an invaluable source of the creating human transformation through the changing of physiology in a very specific way. It's an important corollary of physiology that is congruent. If I am giving you what I think of the positive message, but the voice of the weak, of the tenant of my body is disjointed and in focus, I'm incongruity keeps me from being all I can do and from doing all I can do. From creating my strong state of the giving one step of the contradictory message with a subliminal way of pulling the punch. When you have the experience of the times when you didn't believe the person who we weren't sure of the why of the person, some of the maybe, but some of the somewhat came with the lie of the came away with not really believing him. Your unconscious mind picked up with what your conscious mind didn't. For example, when you asked the question, the person may have said yes, but at the time his head may have been slowly shaking no, or he may have said I can't handle it, but you noted with the shoulder that would hunch over, the eyes were down, when his breath was shallow. All of them told the unconscious that he was saying, I can't handle it. Part of him wanted to do what you're asking, parts of him didn't. Parts of him was confident, part of him wasn't incongruency of the work as against him. He was trying to do two directions. One of the representing one thing in the words and the quiet, another in physiology. We've all learned experience of the price of incongruency when part of us really wants something but another part wants to seem to stop us. Congruency is power. People that consistently succeed are those with the commit, although the reach over the mental, the physical, the work together toward the achieving the task, stop at the moment and think of the three most congruent people that you know. Now think of the three most incongruent people that you know. What is the difference between them and how congruent the people that affect the personal vision versus people who are incongruent? Developing congruency, major key of the personal power with I'm communicating him and empathic in words, my voice, my reading, my entire physiology, my body, my words, match. I'm giving the clear signal to the brain that this is what I wanted to produce, and my mind responds accordingly. If I say to yourself, well, if you say to yourself, well, yeah, I guess what I ought to be doing in your physiology is weaken and decipher the works, what sort of the messages of the brain get. If likely to trying with the view with the television flickering tube that we barely make of the picture, same is true with your brain. If the signal that your body provides is weak and conflicting, if the brain does not have the clear sense of what to do, it's like a soldier going into the battle with a general who says, well, maybe we ought to try this. I'm not that sure if this will work, but let's go. See what happens. What kind of state does that put the soldier in? If you say, absolutely, I'll do that, and your physiology is unified with it, is your posture and the facial expression of the breathing pattern, the quality of the gestures and movements of your words with the tonality match. You absolutely will do it. The congruent states are what we will all want to move toward. The biggest step that you can take to be sure that you are firm and to decipher the congruent physiology in your words and your body doesn't match up. You're not going to be totally effective. One way to develop congruency is to model the physiology of the people over there who are congruent. But the essence of the modeling is to discover which part of the brain affected the person in the given situation you want to be effectively running you with the brain in the same way with the mirror someone's physiology exactly. You will tap the same part of the brain hour in with the congruent state, but if not, shift him one and what percentage of the time your incongruent states can you be congruent more often. Start with today with a step with identify 5 people with a powerful physiology you would like to mirror, but the physiology is different for yours. How do the people stand, move? What are some of the key facial expression and gestures? Take a moment and sit in the way one of these people sit, but to make similar facial expression and gestures know how they feel. In our seminars, we have people to mirror the other physiology, but they find the acts with a similar shape of getting similar feeling. So one time, try to exercise that you don't need to do this someone else, and have the person recall the specific intent of the memory without feeling without telling them about it. Go back into that state. Now I want you to mirror the person exactly, mirror the way they're sitting, bow their legs in position, mirror the position of his arms and hands, mirror the amount of tension you see on his face and body, mirror the position of the head and any movement that you see in any legs or neck, mirror his mouth, the skin tension, and the rate of breathing. Try to put yourself in the exact physiology he's in. If you're doing all of this exactly you see, but the duplicating of the person's physiology you will provide in your brain that you will have the same signal as he is given in your brain. You'll be able to feel similar with the same feeling. Often you see yourself with a version of the same pictures, and he's seeing thinking of your version, the same thoughts of he's thinking. After you've done this, not a couple of words to describe the state that you're in. Note a couple of words to describe the state you're in. What you feel while you're with the mirroring of the person, exactly the check with the person to find out what he's feeling. About 80 to 90% of the time, you will use the same word to describe the state you were in. And the many people in every seminar will actually describe the same when the other person is seeing what they described exactly what the person was with identified with the people that be picturing in his mind. Some of the accuracy of the defy of the rational explanation of almost with the psychic experience, except there is no psychic training. All we do is deliver it into our brain with the exact same message of the person we're mirroring. Be able to run a mile with a less than 4 minutes shortly after the modeling of the course time, but you're not modeling with the person exactly because you did not develop the same consistent message with the nervous system that through the consistent practice with the important note with some of the strategies that require levels of psychological development and reprogram or programming that you do but not have. That you made with the model with the world's best creators baker, but if you try to make a recipe in an oven that only gets up to 225 degrees and while it has to go to 625, you're not going to produce the same result. However, if the recipe can maximize the result that you get even with your oven. After you model they have given the oven increase the output with over the years, you can create the same result with the willing to pay with an appropriate price, or to increase your ability to produce the result by model stretching. You may need to invest some time and increase the power of your oven. This is something we talk about a bit in the next chapter. Being at the time of the physiology for the creative, the choice of the people to take drugs, with drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, overeat, aren't they all of the indirect attempts to change the state by changing physiology with the chapter that provide with the direct approach to quickly change the state without breathing, moving the body with the facial muscle with a new pad with immediately change with your state. They will produce the same result with the food, alcohol, with drugs without harmful side effects without either with your body or your psyche. Remember the cybernetic loop and the individual who have the most choice of control of any of the devices with the most critical aspect with its flexibility. All others being equal to the system, and the more flexible, but they have more choice, the more ability to direct the others aspect of the system, and the same with the people. The people who have most choice are one of the most in charge of the modeling is creating possibility, and there's no faster but the more dynamic way than through physiology. The Next time you see someone extremely successful, someone that you admire with respect, the copy the gesture, feel the difference of copy, enjoy with the change with the patterns, and play, experiment with the new choices that await you. Now let's take a look at another aspect of the physiology of the food we eat, with the food, with the breathe, with the nutrition we supply with ourselves. They are all parts of Chapter 10, the energy of fuel of excellence. Excellence.